to recap. So we decided now we're going to start with a conversation about women and womanhood, and because we're all women, and the implications of what being a woman is, the social pressures, the expectations, and also how we each deal with them. With me, I have Christina. I have Natasha, who is a psychologist, and she is going to kind of be helping us through each of our conversations each week and giving us some insight as well. And then, of course, we have Muchidzi, who is our Facebook manager. So, like, when do you feel you're most strong and female and woman, like as a woman, like you feel, because I think there's also power to it, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's a lot of power in being a woman. And there's things that I look at from myself and from my friends and from my sisters, and I look at them like, wow, now that's some woman stuff there, you know, like I don't see a man doing that. Being on my period is one. Like, I think I'm a boss. I feel like I'm a warrior every time I'm on my period. But I mean, others feel differently. But I feel like, you know, no man could go through that pain, giving birth, another one. Like, that's when I feel like the most like, whoa, like powerful and like feminine, the divine feminine energy, if you will. But when do you guys feel that sort of feeling?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I think, yeah, I think I carry my femininity with me everywhere, if you want. Yeah, that is my source. That is my who it is. Yeah, it's where I generate my energy from, if you want. And I think that has at times a great potential, and at other times I'm like, whoa, I'm finished. I'm on the floor.
Yeah.
So, but I do, how can I say, not sure. I do feel that feminine energy is something that is more is broader, can I say, than potentially a male's energy. I think we are able to absorb more information from, and I suppose that's not just from a practical, but I see that from an emotional perspective. We're the great diplomats in many ways, no? And I think that's one of the things that you see, the women who are in power are actually the ones that, you know, leaders of countries and things like that are the ones that are able to negotiate, less aggressive. So I think there's a lot of, personally, I feel, yeah, I'm very grateful for that feminine energy. It's something that I feel is, it's my source, and I wouldn't change it.
Yeah.
I want to be a man. But yeah, I don't know if that's answered your question.
I think for sure, starting from what Muchidzi had said earlier, is that I think that there is a lot of expectation that comes with being a woman, and stereotypically, what did that role then entail? And is it being married, having a family, having children, and it also needs to be done by specific timeframes and ages. Otherwise, you kind of looked at as though you're missing something, or there's something not okay with you. And I think the older generation of women kind of also, as much as they might not necessarily have wanted to, kind of went with the flow and succumbed to some of the pressure that had come from older generations. Whereas I think with younger generations now, I think the ability to not take on the pressure is more prevalent. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing for you to be able to decide for yourself what is meaningful and when making that particular decision is going to make sense for you, if at all. And to constantly be deliberate, because I think that that's key, is that, you know, how do we go about living our lives in a very deliberate, conscious way, making choices for ourselves that make sense for where we're at. It's also interesting that the only people who ask, do you have someone special and when are we going to have grandbabies, are women.
True.
You know, the men families aren't asking those questions.
True.
And so I think that that is also indicative of how this normalized experience of what being a woman kind of filters down and who it comes from. And I think, again, we need to be very conscious and aware of the pressures that we then put on each other, and what that means. Yeah. So yes, I think that was something interesting, is that it's often women asking the questions of women.
Definitely.
And I think feminine energy.
And
Sorry?
judging, and also judging.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
like I judge my friend. I was like, how could you not want to have kids? But and I was like, wait, come on. She has a right to decide what she wants to do with her body. But
and you know, the judging is unintentional, because you know, it's just kind of the surprise of, oh my God, okay, there's a different way of doing it. And so I don't think it was an intentional judgment that was being made. It was just, okay, there is a different way of being able to show up in the world as a woman, and that way counts just as much. Yeah, and I think, again, it's about going back and being deliberate with ourselves in terms of, okay, where is our response coming from, and what does it actually mean?
Yeah, it does. I also have to think, though, I mean, we also live in an age where there are also some gendered males who carry feminine energy. I don't know if that makes sense, right?
Absolutely.
But I think for a lot of people that might be, and it is still, and especially the older generation, it is something that is hard to kind of reconcile with or really understand. And Natasha, have you seen that in you know, in your work? How people, and even us, I mean, sometimes I get it wrong, where people are just not able to reconcile like someone's gender versus someone's energy, or how they feel, or how they want to be seen, or how they even see themselves. And how can we do better just as a society to kind of be okay with like accepting the complexities that come with like gender and energy and who we think we are, who we see ourselves as, and all of that, because it's, I mean, we could go on forever, but sure. I think I'll end there. Natasha, any thoughts?
So I think I want to kind of backtrack and comment, and so it might feel like a long-winded answer, but feminine energy, I think, is hugely powerful. And I think if we as women were to embrace it fully, we would be incredibly powerful. And the world would, as a result, be that too. And I think that very often we kind of also somehow are being made to feel apologetic for being women, or being emotional, or allowing ourselves to also be vulnerable, and not really just giving ourselves permission to show up in the way that we can and we should. I think coming to the topic of people defining themselves in different ways, whether it's gender neutral, whatever kinds of pronouns you use to define yourself, I think certainly the younger generation, and I see it with my much younger clients, so adolescents, young adults, where the confidence to be able to explore the different parts of themselves seems to be something that is far more okay and acceptable than it is with older people.
Yeah.
You know, because it kind of feels like, you know, the older people that had those questions kind of needed to push up against society so much, and they really have set the way forward for younger people to be able to sit and actually, again, ask themselves the question of, what does this mean for me, and how do I choose to identify myself? But acceptance, and I think that was one of the questions you asked, Pindi, is that acceptance of, you know, how do we as society accept it? I think very often the person who is going through that process, their acceptance of themselves would largely determine how society is going to respond. So going back to Muchitsi, with being asked these questions, for as long as she does not accept that pressure, she can't have it. It's not on her.
Yeah.
And so it's not something that she thinks about every day. And so it's okay. So if she needs to go home and face these questions, it's okay. She'll answer as honestly as she can, but there's no pressure that she then sits with. Or if it is, it's momentary. It's not going to be something that kind of destabilizes who she is or the choices that she's
Mm.
I think that is very easy in terms of, like when we're talking about marriage and things like that, the pressure. But if it's about you, your being, your sexuality, your gender, how you see yourself or want to be seen in this world, and it's not accepted by your family and it's not accepted by society, and people will, some kids have been sent to conversion therapy, and that's still legal in so many places, where your very being is being questioned, and I think I'm so pleased that now this younger generation is coming forward, and there seems to be a certain momentum, of acceptance. And we're still, I know that I don't always get the words right and what have you, but for me, I just hope we get to the point where we don't have to label ourselves. That kids don't have to come out and say, I am so, that whoever they are, in actual fact, is just good, is enough. Do you know what I mean? I don't come out and say I'm heterosexual. I you know what I mean? And
exactly.
So why would somebody else have to come out and say, I understand it if they want to explain and stuff like that. That's absolutely, as much as if I want to explain my heterosexuality, totally go for it. I think that's really, and today it's still necessary because there isn't that acceptance. And I think kids are just being so brave, and wherever we can, I think we have to embrace that exploration. Because I think I know, that probably, like you say, Natasha, they are giving themselves that opportunity, which in previous generations, they weren't given that opportunity. They're claiming this opportunity. They're claiming, for themselves. And I think that's I think it's an exciting time. But for us who have, like for myself, I know that it's my responsibility to make space for whoever it is, and to know that however you want to be, however you want to present yourself, is always good enough, and that I'm quite conscious of that. And I see that even at this kids' school and stuff like that, there are kids who have reassigned their genders and stuff like that, and it's welcome and it's embraced. And I think that's, if I was in their position, gosh, would be welcome.